Okay, if we can ask everyone to grab a seat. Please don't push or shove. We think there's plenty of room for everyone. That was pretty good.
I love it.
More people sitting on the stage. All right. Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'm going to introduce Lake Forest Mayor Robert Pequeno.
Hey, thank you, and welcome to the Lake Forest Civic Center. If you haven't been here before, we call it the community's 100-year home because this is a place where we want you to come to participate in government, celebrate life's milestones in our community center, in our senior center, and here in the council chambers performing arts center. It was paid for by primarily by developer fees, allowing us to remain debt-free. So tonight is another Stay Safe Lake Forest event. As a former Orange County Deputy Sheriff here in the city of Lake Forest, I know the city is very safe. These town halls were intended to provide you with information to keep you and your family even safer and to help you understand how we work with our public safety partners. We're fortunate to have two highly professional public safety agencies here in Lake Forest, the Orange County Fire Authority and the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Tonight, Kim Brown with the Orange County Fire Authority, Senior Inspector for Community Wildfire Mitigation, will teach us how to make our home safe from flying embers during a fire. And we also have Captain Chad Taylor, Chief of Lake Forest Police Services, who will talk about what to do if an evacuation is needed. So we'll have a question and answer period at the end of the presentations, and it hasn't been too long since our residents experienced a wildfire and the calamity and how their houses were almost affected. So without any further.
Back. Some slides. Good evening. Can you hear me? Is this thing on? First, I would like to thank the City of Lake Forest for hosting this event at this amazing facility. It's absolutely beautiful. Really happy to be here. Thank you, Mayor Pequeno, very much. Captain Taylor, thank you for being here and looking forward to your presentation. Would also like to thank Jonathan for being the key to putting this whole thing together. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come out and learn more about how you can protect your homes and your communities from the very real threat of wildfire. I'd also like to thank the HOAs in our communities. They do an amazing job managing the vegetation around your communities. Without the proactive work that they've done, we would very well have experienced a far different outcome in many of the fires that have affected the neighborhood and your communities. Again, my name is Kim Brown. I'm a senior fire prevention specialist with Orange County Fire Authority in the Community Wildfire Mitigation section. And tonight we're going to be providing some information on how you can help your home and your community be better able to survive a wildland fire event and reduce the impact of wildland fires in your communities. This can be accomplished not just through vegetation management, which, like I said, your HOAs are doing a fabulous job with, but also by hardening your home and working together as a community to become more resilient. Before I begin this presentation, I'd like to mention that all of the information that I'm sharing tonight is available on our website, www.ocfa.org/RSG. And we do have some literature back there. If you walk away with anything tonight, the trifold is a great one because it's got that website. So I'd just like to point that out. So first, let's talk about fire history and our fire problem. Way back in 1993, the Laguna Fire, the one up on your left up there, burned over 14,000 acres. It was a wind-driven fire and damaged or destroyed over 300 homes. You might remember the Miracle House, a single home that remained in a neighborhood surrounded by homes that were just completely destroyed. This home was not really a miracle. The homeowner just took some steps to mitigate the damage, to harden his home. And because of that, it was able to survive the fire that destroyed every other home in the neighborhood. The Freeway complex fire, in November of 2008, destroyed over 350 structures in the city of Yorba Linda. Also a wind-driven fire, embers getting into attic vents and into the gaps in eaves destroyed homes that were constructed around the same time as homes in many Lake Forest communities. These homes don't have construction features that make them a harder home and able to withstand fires. Many of the homes in Yorba Linda have still not been rebuilt yet. Closer to Lake Forest, the Santiago Fire, October 21st in 2007, over 28,000 acres, one of our larger fires, and you can see the actual fire perimeter, how it burned up and into and around Lake Forest. That fire, because of the vegetation management that your HOAs have done, it really helped slow the forward progress of the fire, and our firefighters were able to defend the homes, and we didn't lose any homes in Lake Forest during that fire. More recently, in 2020, the Silverado and the bonfires. The bonfire occurred in December, late in the year. We've seen more and more fires occurring late in the year. For example, just this month, on February 12th, we had the Emerald Fire in Emerald Bay. A wind-driven fire again, Santa Ana winds. This fire burned through green, wet fuels. So the fuels, the green grasses that have a lot of fuel moisture content in them, burned right through them. We were able to, fire did slow down, hit that vegetation management the community does around it. We were able to defend those homes in this case as well. So just please note that our fire problem has changed. Fire season is year-round. We need to prepare our communities now. So some quick stats. On this slide, you can see this data is from 2017. It shows the number of damaged or destroyed homes based on where they were located in the fire hazard severity zone. So that map for the city of Lake Forest is on your left up there. The red is very high, the orange is high, yellow is moderate. These numbers from CAL FIRE show that most homes were damaged or destroyed were not in the very high fire hazard severity zone. In fact, only 20% of homes that were damaged or destroyed in these 2017 stats were in the very high fire hazard severity zone. So what does this mean? Why did we lose more homes outside of the very high? Very likely, the reason that we lost these structures during wildland fire events was due to ember intrusion. We see most homes lost because of ember intrusion. Another reason might be that fires seem to be moving farther into the communities because the construction features just aren't there to protect the homes. The homes are older, they don't have those construction features. New homes in very high, for example, the Oaks and Iron Ridge in Lake Forest, they are built hardened. They're built with what we call Chapter 7A construction. These homes are hardened to better protect them from the direct and radiant heat, as well as ember intrusion. And this might be why we are looking at not losing as many structures in the very high. Most of the homes in Lake Forest were built long before Chapter 7A construction requirements were in place. And this is why this evening we're going to be focusing on that home hardening. First, we're going to talk just briefly about laws and regulations, what gives us the authority to enforce. Laws, regulations, locally adopted codes, they guide us in the requirements to inspect and enforce vegetation management. As of 2008, they also require certain construction features, that 7A construction that I was talking about in the very high fire hazard severity zones. This includes accessory dwelling units as well, so any new ADUs that you're building, they're going to require that 7A construction too. Prior to 2008, we did not have requirements for construction features. This is why we want the communities of Lake Forest to be aware that about the things that they can do to harden their home. A couple of newer assembly bills I'll just mention really briefly. Assembly Bill 38, which requires the seller of properties in the high and the very high to disclose the property is compliant with defensible space requirements. Currently, the state does not publish maps of the very high, so we're not required to inspect defensible space for those homes yet, but when those maps are published, we will be required to. And then Assembly Bill 3074. This one, effective January of 2023, will require new homes constructed in the very high to be required to provide mitigation measures in the very first 5 feet surrounding the structure. This is what we refer to as the immediate zone. The OCFA is already working with new developments to implement this measure and is proactively including this on our upcoming code adoption cycle, which is happening this year. Then briefly, I also want to touch on vegetation management before I get into home hardening. Vegetation management, fuel modification first. It's planned landscape design that slows the progress of the fire and reduces direct flame and radiant heat during a fire event, improving the chances of structure survivability. In your communities, fuel modification areas are generally in areas on the perimeter of the communities, up against those wildland areas. The HOAs in Lake Forest, as I said before, are very proactive in managing the fuel mod areas around the community. The fuel mod areas around Foothill Ranch and Portola 1 and 2, in fact, have done an amazing job of slowing down the forward progress of fires in the past and providing an area where our firefighters can better defend the homes in the neighborhoods. We cannot always count on vegetation management alone, though. During wind-driven ember storms, for example, which most of our destructive fires we see, embers can travel miles and land on interior slopes in communities where we've seen fires ignite and increase the potential for damage to homes. Therefore, we're focusing on interior slopes with your HOAs as well as the exterior perimeters, because fire does not limit itself to lines drawn on a fuel modification plan, and this is one reason why home hardening is as vital to our communities as vegetation management. So your communities are doing the fuel modification work. What can you do as a homeowner? Your individual home, you're required to maintain defensible space. So besides hardening your home, we will talk about that more in just a minute. Your responsibility is creating and maintaining defensible space on your individual property. So this is the vegetation in your yard, the front yard, the backyard, the side yards, your actual yard that you maintain. Within your yard, you should be removing any dead and dying plant material, planting smart plants that are more fire resistant, creating horizontal and vertical separation, which means keeping ground covers low, keeping trees limbed up, so that that fire stays low to the ground, keeping vegetation away from the homes, planting smart. So we want to keep the fire low, away from the structure, and we don't want it to get up into the trees. So finally on to home hardening. A hardened home is one that can withstand the effects of a wind-driven fire, and it complies with required vegetation management as well as having been hardened by Chapter 7A construction features. The image on these slides show the 2020 Blue Ridge Fire in Yorba Linda. The home was destroyed, this home that was destroyed, you can see it on the edge here and then over in this image, didn't have 7A construction features. Back in 2008, during the Freeway complex fire, this structure was very lucky. It didn't burn, it wasn't destroyed, but many of the rest of the homes in this neighborhood were. And these homes have been rebuilt, most of them, if not all of them, with 7A construction features. And you can see in this fire, not one of the other structures sustained damage in this neighborhood. So this is clearly evident that construction features do help in wildland fires. They help maintain that structure and keep it from burning. More home hardening, so some basic fire behavior components. 3 basic components. First, the radiant heat over on your left over there. That's the fire moving towards the structure, preheating the fuels as the fire approaches and increasing the chances of structure ignition. Then direct flame contact. We want to keep the fire away from the home, obviously, because that direct flame is going to ignite the fuels in and around your yard and the structure itself, if given the chance. And then the way that we lose most homes during a fire, those flying ember brands. They can lodge in crevices in your home, unprotected areas, eaves, decks, and any vulnerable place in your home. Construction features reduce the chances of home ignition. Most homes are lost due to ember intrusion, as I said. And we have also experienced catastrophic loss in neighborhoods with little or no 7A construction features due to ignition of the structure, which then becomes the fuel to ignite structures around it, which we call home-to-home ignition. So those are some basic components about fire behavior. So all this talk about 7A construction and home hardening, it sounds like it could come with a very high price tag, and it doesn't have to. Besides those construction features, there's some things that you can do to help mitigate, some alternatives, and I'll talk about those in just a minute. I do want to say that 7A construction is not just for new homes that are being built. You can retrofit your home with these construction features. We do have some examples of some vents and stuff on the back table and more information on certain components. Again, that's on our website as well. So I'm going to show a video. It's about 3.5 minutes, and it's going to, well, it basically speaks for itself. So I'll play it and give you guys an idea of what it looks like for a home that's burning, that has construction features in some components and doesn't, from the Insurance Business Institute. So you can see how the home has got different construction features: wood shake roof, Class A roof. They're trying to make it like a regular home by putting mulch around the house, and they're going to add some plants up against it. They've got different siding types that they've constructed it of. So they've got some wood siding there, some vinyl siding, some fire-resistant siding. They've put vinyl gutters and metal gutters. And then they're going to blow a bunch of embers at this point. "10 to 20 mile per hour winds is what it's emulating. Just like an ember. That window is open. It does have a embers blowing up against the eave. That vent up there. There, the gutters are catching because there's debris left in the gutters. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. You can see how the mulch is catching in and around the house. The vinyl gutters are dripping down the side of the house, but those metal gutters, the material in those is actually catching and burning against the structure, so that is a problem. Thank you. So it does have a Class A roof, but those valleys where fuels, dead debris is catching can be a problem for your home. And most homes do not have wood shake roofs in Lake Forest. So different types of walls, as I mentioned before. We've got a wood wall, fiber cement wall, and vinyl siding. So you can see the biggest fire problem, obviously, is the wood wall. We'll talk about some mitigation with that in just a little bit. Let's see that first 5 feet around the structure, how important it is with that mulch burning right up against it. Then we talk about vents, or we'll talk about vents in just a minute as well. So embers are still getting through that, but just very minimal. For the most part, those little tiny embers will go out, but it's also important to use that 1/8 inch mesh. And then this fiberglass window screen, it's an open window that they were simulating. And you can imagine if there was couches, materials inside the home, those catching as well. So During evacuation, it's important to close your windows if you get a chance. So that is just a brief video that I wanted to show to give you an idea of what it looks like when a home burns and the different construction features of a home. So now I will talk a little bit about the individual components. Please note that this is a really high-level overview. If you would like more detail, we will meet one-on-one with you. We'll come out and do a home assessment. There's some sign-up sheets in the back if you'd like. There's information, and I'll have a phone number to call in just a little bit as well. So let's talk about roofs first. Most roofs in Lake Forest are Class A non-combustible roofs. However, even though they're fire resistant, it's really important to maintain them very well. As homes age, gaps can form, tiles can break. You need to keep your roof in good repair because embers can lodge in those gaps and they can catch the material underneath that non-combustible roof on fire. This includes bird stopping on rolled tile roofs, so the ends that have that wood stop to keep the birds' nests out. They also keep embers out if they're maintained right. Also, as shown in that video, make sure to keep your roof free from debris because embers can land in that and catch that on fire. Eaves, the eaves of homes, generally in the older homes in Lake Forest, not the newer construction, they have exposed eaves. So that's where you can see those rafter tails, those wood rafter tails exposed. Better option is to enclose those so that you have stucco or something non-combustible on the outside. And another alternative, if you can't afford to enclose them, is to maintain them very well. Keep them free of rot. Give them a good coat of paint. Seal any nooks and crannies with fire-resistant caulking, and again, just keep them in good repair. Apply that fire-resistant caulking just any nook and cranny so there's no place for those embers to lodge during a wind-driven fire. As I mentioned before, the gutters, the problem with rain gutters is debris filling them up. You can buy screens to cover them. They need to be non-combustible screens, but you still need to keep them free of debris because again, the fire landing in that debris can melt vinyl, and it could ignite the material in metal gutters and cause that fascia board to ignite. So keeping them clean is what I want you to remember here with gutters. Vents, if possible, upgrade your vents to baffled ember-resistant vents. We have some examples of those back on the table as well. Keep in mind, though, that your vents do serve a purpose. Airflow is important. An inexpensive fix would be to cover your vents with 1/8 inch mesh. So metal mesh will help keep embers from getting into the vents and getting into your attic, as it showed on that video. We don't want those embers landing on insulation and causing fires inside your attic. Studies have shown that 1/8 inch mesh keeps embers out while still allowing airflow. However, if you do have concerns, definitely consult a professional for the installation of those vents or maintaining the vents. Windows, at some point, homes will need windows to be replaced or repaired. When it is time, install dual pane windows with one pane being tempered glass. Keep combustible material away from windows. This I can't stress enough. So this includes organic mulch. Keep plants low. Use rock gravel under windows instead. Keep pets and bedding, dog beds and cushions on patio furniture away from windows if you can. Let's see, exterior walls and siding. Good options are non-combustible brick stucco. If your exterior walls are wood, a good coat of paint, just like eaves, keeping them free of rot, making sure that there's no gaps and any gaps are filled with fire-resistant caulking as well. Decks, patio covers, and balconies. Anything attached to your home, non-combustible is a better choice. However, if replacement's not an option and you have these construction elements, keep them in good repair, just like your eaves, a good coat of paint, no rot, replace any rotting material on them. Good coat of paint, caulking materials, seal gaps. This can help protect your home until you can replace with non-combustible. Fences, this is an important component. If a fence catches fire, the fire can run up towards the structure. So they should be constructed of non-combustible material like wrought iron, cinder block. If replacement is not an option, then consider replacing just the first 5 to 10 feet right next to the structure to keep that fire away from the home. So those, again, are just a really high-level overview of our construction features. Want to talk a little bit about the immediate zone. That's that thing that I mentioned with AB 3074 coming up in 2023. The main objective here is to reduce the potential that embers have of landing near a building and igniting fuels, and expose the area around a home to that direct flame. The immediate zone is also called and referred to the 0 to 5 foot zone. In this area, it's best to install hard surfaces, reduce the vegetation if possible, and eliminate combustible materials such as mulch. So keep the combustible material at least 5 feet away. Things like patio cushions, like I mentioned before, dog beds, bags of mulch, trash cans, store them away if you can, keep them closed if not, and that rock gravel, larger rock, not pea gravel, because pea gravel can easily blow away, or when you're cleaning up and stuff, it's not as secure as regular rock and can expose that underbrush. Let's see, on to what home hardening can do to make a difference. So these are images from a home that was threatened by a fire. Thankfully, firefighters were on scene to help keep the home from being destroyed. The home construction is very similar to homes in Lake Forest. You can tell just looking at it. You can see slopes, you can see the exposed eaves, patio covers. The things I want to point out in this slide are those combustibles that were stored near the structure. You can see the patio cushions underneath that patio cover, right up against the windows as well. Probably helped to break the windows with that direct and radiant heat against them and get into the structure. I want to also mention the mulch in the picture down here. It got into the weep seal. What you can't see, it's my understanding that the firefighters inside the home actually had to pull the drywall out to make sure there was no extension. So keeping the fire, they were doing their job, keeping the fire out, but they had to check for extension. So keeping the mulch away, making sure that you have gravel instead of combustible material up against the home, really important to helping prevent fire in that immediate zone around your home. The combustible accessory structure up in the top right, the firefighters were there to help put it out, but obviously if that fire would have gotten going on that structure, it would have been much closer to the home and would have caused more damage against the home as well. So again, keeping that in good repair, a good coat of paint, replacing it with fire-resistant material when possible. And then, let's see, accessory structure, the mulch, the windows. So obviously this was not a hardened home. A hardened home is a home that's better able to withstand and survive a wildland fire. Steps could have been taken by this homeowner before the fire to reduce the damages, and for the communities of Lake Forest, that's what we're hoping you're going to do now. So quickly, I would just like to offer again that we do free home assessments. Oops, sorry about that. We actually have an online home assessment tool. If you visit our webpage right there, you can do the home assessment on your own. It's electronic and really easy to go through, but we're happy to come out and talk to you one-on-one. If you want to reach out via email or call that phone number, you can stop by our tables in the back. We're happy to come out and meet one-on-one. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. So in closing, I would just like to remind you that working together, we can better protect our communities, and by protecting the structures as well as protecting the surrounding area of the structure. Together we can build communities that are safer and more resilient to wildland fires. Additionally, I would like to say that we're looking forward to continue working closely with our city of Lake Forest, the homeowners associations that are doing such a wonderful job out there with their vegetation management, and with you, our community members, to help raise awareness and provide outreach and education. Finally, I would like to thank the city of Lake Forest for putting this all together. Thank you. And the OCFA, allowing the OCFA this opportunity to talk. Thank you very much. Can I just pull this out?
We can,
Good.
we'll
Okay.
Thank you, Kim. So we're now going to have, as you know, the Orange County Sheriff's Department provides law enforcement services for the city of Lake Forest. We're a contract city. That's one of the way we keep our costs low, and we're fortunate to have the Orange County Sheriff's Department, just as we are to have the Orange County Fire Authority. So I'd like to ask our Captain Chad Taylor, who serves as the Lake Forest Chief of Police Services, to come up. He's going to talk a little bit about evacuations, how they work, when they come, and then why it's sometimes when you're allowed to go back into your home. So, Chief?
Hello, everyone. First off, hello, Sergeant Marquez. Hello, Hope. First off, Chad Taylor. I've been in the city for about 3 years now as the lieutenant for the city of Lake Forest. Prior to that, I worked in the city for about 5 years, from 2002 to 2007, working patrol in the city. In 2007, I left and I went to another assignment in the air unit. Coincidentally, around 2007 is the same time that the fires, the Santiago Fire started, which was the big fire that hit this area. Seeing the component from law enforcement and then seeing the actual component from the air unit where you're actually working with fire assets and resources, it was completely different for me. Obviously, in law enforcement, we don't get a lot of fire science classes, so we kind of leave that up to the experts, and then we work in conjunction with them. In 2019, when I came to the city, we came up with the city as well as the fire authority and emergency operations services for the county. We came up with a plan for evacuation zones for the city of Lake Forest because we found other cities in the area were doing the same thing. So based off of that, we drew an evacuation map, which I think Jonathan at some point here is going to put up. And Jonathan's going to stay here with me. He's going to bounce some, him and I are going to kind of work back and forth because we work in conjunction with the city to establish these evacuation zones, but also with the fire authority and the emergency services center for the county. But in 2019, when we came here, we drew up an evacuation map, and we mainly concentrated on those areas that butted up against the wildland area up here on the east. For us, we call Foothill Ranch and Portola Hills the east side of Lake Forest because we use the 5 freeway as a north-south divider. So if you guys hear me say the east side, that means up here where we're at. So we came up with a game plan for evacuation zones that butted right up against those areas and that were affected by prior fires. And we figured they were going to be the ones that were affected. One of the things that was interesting to me was when the first fire broke off, which was the Santiago Fire in October, was that the fire burned down through the old El Toro Navy base and got all the way down to Trabuco and Irvine. Prior to that, it actually hit Irvine before it moved over this location, and it burned all the way down the 133 into Irvine. I would have never thought in my career that I would see fires going like that through here because we do have so much preparation in the houses and stuff like that. But as I worked with the fire authority, they were explaining to me how the fires work and how they manipulate. It made a little bit more sense to me. So based off of that, even though the first iteration of this map we had just up against wildland, we actually now have evacuation zones for every section of the city. And that comes for not only because of fires, but if earthquakes, or if we have some kind of another critical incident, say we have a tanker that catches on fire, we can designate areas and have evacuation zones. What we found prior to this was when we would designate evacuation zone, we would say from this, if you live east of this street, west of this street, north of this street, and everybody's like, well, I don't know where. It's too confusing. So that's why we drew, I promise you, Jonathan had one job. I'm not lying to you guys. Jonathan had one job, people. So let's see if he gets it going here at any second during this. There we go. Evacuation zone. One job, people. Is it there? Are we there? Okay. Can you make it towards a little bit more so people can kind of make rhyme and reason of it, or is that the best you can do?
Do you want to mess with it, or just happy it's there?
One
So,
time.
real quick to add to the chief, this is at www.lakeforestca.gov/wildfires. And I know we're talking a lot about fires tonight, and this is on our wildfire page. Does everybody here, do you all live in the Portola, Foothill, Baker Ranch area where we've been threatened by fires? Does anyone else live down toward the woods or the other part of town? So I'm a member of our CERT team, and my CERT instructor 20 years ago, Tony's back there. And as Tony would say, it's too easy to think about fires when you come to evacuations, because what else runs through the center of our town that could cause an evacuation, especially for the folks down Tribuco and down toward the freeway? One, the railroad tracks, right? They're carrying tanker cars and different things all day long, and if something was to happen on that rail line, a tanker was to rupture, or even the threat of it, it could spur evacuations, and Tony's smiling proudly back there, by the way. It could force evacuations through the center part of town. And of course, we have the 5 freeway at the edge of town, and trucks and everything every day. If a truck was to go off the El Toro Bridge and end up in town, that could also spur evacuations. So this is on our wildfire page, www.lakeforestca.gov/wildfires. And is it my turn to talk? So,
We're going to work this together, buddy.
all right, thank you. So up in here, you can see there's a bar. So while the whole map does show the city and show the different zones, here where we have the search bar, if you go there and type in your address, so right here we're at Civic Center, 100 Civic Center Drive, it will pop up on the map and tell you what zone you're in. So right here, City Hall, where we are, is Lake Forest Evacuation Zone 12. So you can look at the whole map. It's not as precise. It's drawn by GIS. But if you go home, go to that section, and you should really do that tonight, tomorrow, and you'll see what zone you're in. And then when evacuations are necessary, you know what zone you're in, and this map will change colors. So it'll be green or red depending on the status of evacuation. So you'll be able to look at this map. Blue, obviously, everything is safe. Red is a mandatory evacuation. So this map is important, and the captain will talk a little bit about what spurs
Thank you, Jonathan. So, sorry about that. So really quickly, when we came up with the evacuation zones, we worked, like I said, we worked with the fire authority, we worked with the Emergency Operations Center, we worked with the city as well. And based off of the prior fire information that you saw there, they gave you the maps of the way the different ways the fire burned, the different fires we've had here in the area. If you notice, it kind of follows the same footprint. If they're wind-driven, it kind of follows the same footprint. So based off of that, those models, we kind of drew up our game plan for how we're going to do evacuations. Now, the evacuation zones are kind of designed to have a certain amount of houses in it with a predetermined amount of people who are living per house. I realize that some houses are going to have more and some are going to have less. That's why it just uses that medium. And then we also take into consideration the pathways to get in and out of those locations because typically if we're going to evacuate one zone, there's probably going to be multiple zones that are going to be affected. So we have to make sure that we have avenues to get in and out. Now, one of the things that we take into consideration as well is while you guys are trying to get out, you're going to have first responders trying to get in. So we don't want to have to fight for space on the road, so we're trying to get the resources in at the same time we're trying to get you out. So when we drew up the game plan for this, we put all the zones in place. It's digital. If there's some people that aren't digital, I'm not digital. I literally, in my patrol car and in the car that I drive, I have magnetic maps that I have to use. It's easier for me because in a wind-driven event, at my age, trying to look on a little phone at what I am. But what I did find in the last event, what the place where people struggled was we had these evacuation zones in place. The city did a great job. The fire authority, everybody, we did a campaign to go out there and let people know, hey, these are the zones you're in. And when the fire hit and we said, hey, we're evacuating zones X, Y, and Z, whatever the numbers were, everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody, a large majority of people are like, well, what zone am I in? Well, the time to know what zone you're in is not the time when you're having to evacuate. So when you leave here, if you guys can, to your neighbors, to your HOAs, if you guys have watch captains for neighborhood watch, please make it a point to where everybody knows what zone you're in. You could literally be in one zone on one street, and the next street over you could be in a different zone. So don't just take it for granted. So if you can, take an opportunity to look at this map and figure it out before the actual event takes place. So we'll talk about evacuations. Some of the most heated conversations I've ever had with people were during the evacuation phase of this city, and I appreciate it because I understand we're moving you out, and you guys can sit there and say, okay, well, there's no fire danger. Why can't we go back to our house? Because there was a day there where we didn't have open flame, and we were still mopping up. The issue we have is when we look at the projections of the weather that are coming up and the projections for the weather that night, For us and for the fire authority and for the emergency managers, they look at all those projections, and based off of that, that determines where we're going to be with the evacuation status. In the fires that we had, the first couple nights, there was no doubt it was windy. By the second or third night, the winds died down, and we're already hearing about it. Hey, come, we can't go back. How come we can't go back? Well, that was because originally the fire information that we were getting was that we were going to have another wind event in the middle of the night. Now, a lot of that stuff didn't come up to be as powerful as it was supposed to be, so we had to start making considerations. We understand how frustrating it is to leave. Trust me, there's nothing, I don't like doing that at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't like taking anybody out of their house. The city doesn't care for it. The fire department's busy doing their stuff. But we felt for the safety of the community and for the neighborhood, and as well as the first responders in there, those evacuations to be done. I will, at the end of it, in the event, I will have a conversation with anybody, and they can yell at me and complain to me all they want, but at least they're still alive and they're complaining to me, as opposed to if they went back in or we decided not to because we really didn't want to put people in, displace them. I would feel terribly bad if somebody lost their life or they got injured because we didn't want to inconvenience anybody. So we're always going to err on the side of caution, and we're going to try to get you back as soon as we can. The process of getting you guys back into your residences is very, very lengthy. There's a lot of stakeholders that have to weigh in on it. The fire department, the sheriff's department, gas companies, power companies, public works from the city. All these entities will go in and they're going to evaluate the zone. And then we also have to look at the projected weather that's coming up and where the fire department's at as far as their fire prevention and where they're at it. So it could be a lengthy process. I apologize. I'm just going to say that up front. As far as the zones for this with the city, if you guys have any kind of questions, there are some communities that they actually, in their communities, they put up evacuation zones. They have them put on little signs and they have them staked through different locations on people's yards. That might be something that your HOAs, your neighborhoods can consider when we start getting closer to the fire danger. I know the fire authority says fire danger is year-round. I get it. For us right now, wintertime, I'm not a fire person, so don't take this as gospel. I'm not too worried about a fire right now. They could say something different. I'm not too much. But as you start to get to July, August, and we start getting into September, October, November, December, those are all Santa Ana months, Santa Ana wind events typically for us. So during those time frames, maybe somebody prints out a sign, sticks it in their front yard, says Zone 5, a couple people do. So as people are driving through the neighborhood, they can see that sign. They may not even know what it means, but when the evacuations hit, they're going, oh, we're probably Zone 5 because everybody has that up. I know other communities in like AV and Laguna Beach have done that. People have taken on their own to do that. That's completely up to you guys. But for me, it would probably be something beneficial to get out that information out there. I'm trying to think what else for you guys. Oh, OC Alert. Is everybody here signed on for OC Alert? Do you guys know what OC Alert is?
By OC alert, he means alert OC, but.
I'm dyslexic. Let's go with it. Alert OC. Is everybody here signed up for Alert OC? Do everybody know what it is? Okay, how about Nixle? Does that sound familiar? So I think the city uses
Nixle and alert OC.
Alert OC, and they'll put out the evacuation notices over those data platforms. With those, we have to be somewhat careful. So on the last fire, Irvine was on fire, and they were putting out evacuation orders. And the way they work is they kind of draw like a circle, an area, and it's going to hit numerous cell towers in that area. You get bleed over from that. So when mandatory evacuations went out for Irvine, Baker Ranch immediately started calling us and saying, hey, are we evacuating because we're getting these alerts? And we didn't realize it's because Irvine had put out the evacuation and we had bleed over into Baker Ranch because they're adjacent to that community. So for you guys, it's just one of those things. If it happens, I think for the most part, we'll have the evacuation zones now on there that say the areas that are affected. So that way you guys can actually look at it and see if it's actually going to affect the community that you live in. What else?
So when a fire breaks out, in being a contract city, there's an emergency operations center, and it's typically far away from here, and it's staffed by the Sheriff's Department and the Fire Authority. The city opens its own emergency operations center. So it's in a building next door. We staffed it for, I think, about a week straight during one of the fires, 24-hour shifts, and we have members of the city's leadership team there who act in different roles, and then we have members of the public information team, including Hope's over there, and Nick's up top, and Noel is somewhere as well. And so we'll be 24 hours a day trying to get you guys information. Oftentimes it's relayed from the Sheriff's Department or from the Fire Authority because we have a better relationship with our residents. We have larger followings on Facebook and things like that. So in an emergency, the most accurate, critical information will come from Alert OC. And if you've not looked at Alert OC lately, that's geographic based. So during the last fire, I was getting calls from someone in Missouri saying, why am I still getting these alerts? And it's because they moved without updating their information. So go into Alert OC, make sure that your information is still correct, because with Alert OC and then the city's Nixle, we can make a circle and notify just one neighborhood, or we can notify an entire evacuation zone. So you want to make sure your information is updated, and then you want to make sure that all your family members, anybody who's old enough to have a phone, is in there individually as well, because when this happens, they may or may not be home. And we even have the capability to notify every wireless device within an area. And so if they're at a friend's house, they may get a notification. So I think Kim mentioned it. You want to have a plan with your family, and you want to talk about that plan. Where are we going to go if there's an evacuation? If you're getting evacuated from your home in Portola Hills and your kids are at school, are you going to meet someplace? Typically during a mass emergency, it's easier to text than to call, and it's easier to text out of state. So for my family, we live down in San Juan Capistrano, fire area also. I have a sister in Arizona, so the family knows, text my sister in Arizona where you're at, if you're okay, because she'll receive that information, and that's how we can track. So make that part of your plan. How are you going to communicate? Are you going to try to meet somewhere? And then you've got to talk about the plan and practice the plan. From the city's point of view, the county will usually put out the Alert OC. It's a higher level. It's specific. We'll use Nixle. Now, during the last couple of fires, we learned some lessons where we were notifying just Portola Hills. Hey, evacuation notice, this and that. So we were using that targeting feature. Well, we realized in Lake Forest that we're all connected. We're relatives, we're friends. So we started getting calls in the Emergency Operations Center from people who live in the woods or somewhere else saying, how come you're not telling people what's going on? And so we don't target as much anymore. We kind of do everything to everybody because we recognize you have friends, you have family members, you've lived in different parts of the town. So we'll use Nixle to make alerts. That goes right to your phone. You can also sign up and get it as a voice phone call. You can get it as an email. So Nixle and Alert OC, they'll both send it any way you want to get that information, they'll deliver that information. The city also has an emergency radio station. So 1690, when you're driving out, if you still have AM radio in your car, tonight tune into 1690 and you'll hear Hope's voice or Noel's voice talking about different cities, events in the city. During an emergency, that's where you'll also hear information about evacuations or sheltering in place, whatever we need. You can also stream that. So on the back of your program tonight is the website where you can stream that. So you can stream it over a computer or over your phone. We also have a television station. Does anyone still get television? Cox? Any Cox cable folks? Okay, a couple. So we're on channel 851 on Cox. And right now this is being broadcast or streamed on 851. We put our mayor's minutes with the mayor up on channel 851. During an emergency, there'll either be the chief or someone interviewing, telling you what to do, or there'll be a bulletin board saying, hey, Portola Hills, we need you to evacuate. We've opened up a shelter, etc. So we've got Alert OC, we've got Nixle, which you sign up for at nixle.com. We've got the website, www.lakeforestca.gov/wildfires. We've got the radio station at 1690. We've got the TV station. And then, of course, we have all of our social media. So we have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Nextdoor is also very powerful. I know that it gets to be a war in there sometimes. It can sap your soul. But we can also send an alert out through Nextdoor. And the alert is more than just a post. It'll actually push out to you and contact you. So we've got the ability to reach about 30,000 people through Nextdoor. So even if you never want to go on and see if your neighbors are debating whether that was fireworks or gunshots or why someone let their dog poop on the yard, sign up for that because we use that also. And we keep it updated. And the final thing, and I want to say, and someone, Nick, will correct me from up in the booth, we have a hotline that we do a recording. And that number's on there also, 949-461-3536. So when the EOC is activated, the Emergency Operations Center, every hour or so, you'll hear one of our voices where we'll say, Portola Hills is still evacuation. There's an evacuation warning in Baker Ranch. Please avoid these areas. This will next be updated in an hour. And that, I want to say we got about 1 million phone calls over one of the fire episodes. Nick's texting. Was about 1 million. So that's a very good tool also, because if you end up evacuated, if you end up without a computer or whatever else, you know you can call that and we keep that updated. So that's the ways we try to communicate with you. If we're missing anything, please let me know. The mayor and the city council have been very supportive, obviously, of our outreach and staying in contact. So if there's some other platform or some other way, please let us know.
I'd just like to close in saying thank you guys for showing up. The first couple hours of these events are extremely hectic. We do the best we can. With the law enforcement component, we still have calls for service in the city that aren't fire-related, so we're kind of splitting our resources here at the beginning. But the benefit of the Sheriff's Department is these are almost, well, all the cities down here in South County, they're all contract cities. So as something happens in this city, we can pull resources from neighboring cities to come in and help out with this. The thing that I will tell you is the kind of the model that we have in place is if the location where you live has been designated as an evacuation zone, typically what will happen is any zones that touch that zone will now become warning zones. So it's an arbitrarily we're just making throwing out warnings and stuff like that. We look at it as basically the way the fire is progressing and the resources that we have. So if zone, if zone 8 is being evacuated, if zone 9 and 10 are touching it, they're going to be placed on warnings. Warning is just that. It's just please be ready to go. I can't tell you how much it would help us, the fire authority, law enforcement, the city as well, as we get closer to what I perceive as fire danger, and I apologize, I'm not up here to speak on it, but what I perceive as fire danger. If you have all those resources in place, so if something does happen, we find pets, number one, are the biggest issue. Medications is the other one, and anything of valuables, pictures, family heirlooms, stuff like that. If there's something, we'll try to as much as we can, but there's a pretty good chance we're going to be spread pretty thin, and we're not going to be able to get deputies over there to assist you with getting some of the stuff. I will tell you right now, from one of the fire events, we had a person who was loading up their car, their dog ran, and they were adamant that we had to stop everything we were doing to get that dog, and they were telling our deputies. So the way the evacuation works is our deputies are going to go door to door. We're in the process of developing a new system now that's going to be done electronically, but during the 2 fire events, we're going to go door to door, we're going to knock. We're going to tell you, hey, it's a mandatory evacuation, you have to leave. We are not going to go into your house and we're not going to drag you out and make you leave. That's not our role, okay? We are simply telling you it's a mandatory evacuation, you have to leave. If anybody decides to stay, that's on your own free accord. We're not going to go in and we're not going to use force to remove you. But you also have to realize that if we're telling you it's a mandatory evacuation and now your house is burning and you're screaming for us to come help you, our resources may be someplace else. So there's just a danger involved with staying your ground. As long as you recognize that and have a game plan in place that's going to help you, then there's nothing we can do about it. Once we have an evacuation in place, we don't let people come in and out. What we found on social media was a person put on social media, hey, if you tell the law enforcement officers at the barrier that you have to get medication out of your house, they have to let you in. As a courtesy, we were walking people back up. They were going, hey, we're going to grab our medication. They would go to their house, we'd wait outside, and they would close the door and they waved to us, thank you, we're going to stay. And they went back to their houses and we went back to our barrier. So there's nothing we can do about that. We want to help as much as we can. But if you can't have those medications in place and leave, now the other side component too is after the evacuations are in place, as weird as it sounds, we're in South County, we have to worry about looters. If we start putting out that there's mandatory evacuations over the media, there's a group of people out there like, oh, that's great, this neighborhood's vacant, let's go hit it. And they'll find a way to walk in there and they'll start stealing stuff. So for us, the sheriff's department, not only do we have to deal with the evacuations, we have to man the barriers, but we also have to put patrols in these locations on top of the patrols that we have to do for the normal calls for service. So we're spread really, really thin. So we try to do everything we can to mitigate and limit some of the stuff, but we really do count on the public and you guys being prepared and helping, because that helps us in the long run with as far as directing resources and where we can put them. With that, okay, hold on. I'm going to thank you guys very much. I'm going to present the microphone back to the mayor.
All right, so we want to thank you for coming tonight, and also want to thank the Red Cross in the back for coming. During one of the evacuations when I first got on city council, I actually volunteered to be at one of the shelters, and the Red Cross was there all night long. So thank you for coming tonight, and then you probably have some good information for them when you guys are done. So thank you for coming, and thank you Fire Authority and Sheriff's Department.